The Children's Advocacy Center is something that's very close to my heart. And Rhonda asked me to come today and just share with you a little bit about why I have an interest in it and also the experience that I've had with it and how important it is. And I think I have somewhat of a unique perspective. And I've titled my presentation, An Ex-Prosecutor, Father, and Concerned Citizens Perspective. I think probably the one that's most interesting is the ex-prosecutor perspective. I was a prosecutor in Harris County, Texas, that's Houston, and also in Williamson County. And as a prosecutor in Williamson County, I handled quite a few sexual assaults of children cases, possession of child pornography, all kinds of crimes against children. And during that time period, I had the opportunity to work with the Williamson County Children's Advocacy Center and get to know their staff and their processes pretty well and learn what a real integral role they played in the prosecution of crimes against children. And so my goal has been to use that to really help people understand what we do, because I think if people understood what the Children's Advocacy Center did, they would not hesitate to support us, because it's such a fine mission. Well, what does the CAC do? Well, first thing I have to say is we're not CASA. As everybody knows, CASA is Court-Appointed Special Advocates. They're a very worthy organization, but we're totally different. We have nothing to do with them. We are the Children's Advocacy Center. We're often called a CAC. I'm not sure I like the acronym, but it is what it is, and we can't change it. And so we're a safe place for children to tell their stories. When a child comes to a Children's Advocacy Center, it's not because something good has happened in their life. It's because they've probably experienced the most traumatic event of their life, or they've witnessed something, and it's somewhere where they need to tell their story. And so Children's Advocacy Centers are set up for children to be able to tell their stories in a legally defensible manner. And when I say legally defensible, I'll get to that in a little more depth here in a moment, but that's extremely important, because what we do at Children's Advocacy Centers is we should be a one-stop shop where a child can tell their story one time and not be re-questioned, re-interviewed, and forced to relive the trauma of what happened to them over and over again. It should be the first stop for a child who makes outcry of physical or sexual abuse, or in some cases is a witness. And when I say it should be the first stop, that's where everybody here and our community as a whole comes in educating law enforcement, first responders, and everyday citizens that we have a place to take a child in this specific situation. Most of all, the Children's Advocacy Center is a vital link in the fight against physical and sexual abuse of our children. And as a concerned father, I have 3 children of my own. That also sits close to my heart, because I want to make sure that we do what we can to protect our children. I told you that a Children's Advocacy Center is a place where you can go have a forensic interview done. Well, what do I mean by a forensic interview? A forensic interview is an interview of a child or an adult that is done in a legally defensible, non-leading manner. And that's very important, because when it comes time to prosecute these crimes or evaluate the credibility of the child making the outcry, we need to assure that the interview process was above reproach and done well. And so in doing that, we have trained forensic interviewers. And we have, how many do we have at we have 3 now at the Hill Country Children's Advocacy Center. That's fantastic. These guys go through a substantial amount of training to learn how to interact with and interview children. And so they have the skills and the experience to deal with both the trauma associated with being abused and the challenge of obtaining factual information from sometimes very young children. And that's difficult. For anybody who has children, you know how difficult that is. Children's Advocacy Centers help uncover the facts surrounding an allegation, which in some cases also helps to exonerate people. And so I think when we talk about Children's Advocacy Centers, we have to also bring forth that part of the Children's Advocacy Center, that they're there to assure that justice is done. And that's not always obtaining outcry from children. it is also assuring that if there is an outcry, that outcry is substantiated and is legally supportable. And so it is a neutral facility in that regard. Beyond interviewing, CAC serve as a central place where law enforcement, child protective services, prosecutors, families can all meet and stage an investigation and get a game plan going. One of the most important things that I found from Children's Advocacy Centers are what are called SANE exams. And they're not something that is something that you want to talk about, because what they involve is examinations on children who have been or have claimed to have been sexually assaulted. A SANE exam stands for a sexual assault nurse's exam. When a child makes outcry of sexual abuse, then they need to be examined. Because as we know, and everybody watches CSI, there is normally biological material or some type of evidence that can be preserved. And that is often the difference in a prosecution of a case or a dismissal of a case. And I'm going to go through some specific examples here. But a SANE exam is using medical technology to recover biological material in a legally defensible manner, document and preserve injuries. Because if a child makes outcry and a SANE exam is not done for 3-4 weeks later, the chances of any biological material or evidence remaining is very slim. And so it's an education process of making sure people know to come in and have a SANE exam done. We have SANE nurses, and SANE nurses are specially trained to perform these exams on children and to do so in a legally defensible manner in the collection and preservation of the evidence. Well, one of the main questions that I get and that I try to communicate to people is why we need a CAC. Well, we need a CAC because kids are reluctant to talk about the bad things that have happened to them. No child wants to tell you about the horrible bad things that happened to them. But we need a CAC because there are some very bad people in this world who would do some very bad things to children. This is Todd Wiseman. I prosecuted Todd Wiseman in 2010 when I was a prosecutor with the Williamson County District Attorney's Office. For a period of about a year and a half, maybe more, Todd Wiseman was molesting his 12-year-old stepdaughter, whose name was Abigail. And Abigail was a very shy girl who was very reluctant to tell her story. But we went and we tried Mr. Wiseman. And the evidence that we had was in large part due to the participation with the Williamson County Children's Advocacy Center. After the matter was reported to the Taylor Police Department and Children's Protective Service, the child was taken to the Children's Advocacy Center and interviewed. The child provided significant details regarding the abuse. Mr. Wiseman subsequently confessed to a Taylor police investigator, and he did confess, and it was a very long letter that he wrote. Well, what was the result? Well, on July 1st, 2011 at 4:45 p.m., Judge Carnes, after the jury found Todd Wiseman guilty on, I believe, 26 counts, sentenced him to a total of 101 years in prison. And much from the benefit of the CAC and what they did to make sure that the process was followed, the child was interviewed, and Abigail was not a child who wanted to come tell her story easily. And these trained individuals were key in reaching a prosecution of Mr. Wiseman. July 1st, 2011, that's the day my daughter was born. And so I had to leave right before sentencing. But that's one that I'll always remember. Why do we need a CAC? Because we help defend those that cannot defend themselves. What do I mean by that? Well, sometimes the victims of sexual abuse are very small children, very young, and it's disturbing. And I know it's hard to sit here and talk about it and think about it, but it's real, it happens, and it happens in this community, in this town, and in all of the communities we serve and anywhere you go. And so it's here, and it's not going anywhere. And so we need to make sure we have the resources to protect it. Y'all may recognize this from the Burnett County, the Burnett Bulletin. 17-year-old Burnett man has been arrested and charged with sexually assaulting a young girl. On January 21st, after a 4-year-old girl told forensic interviewer of the Hill Country Children's Advocacy Center that she had been sexually assaulted. And so that's how that came out. The child probably made outcry somewhere, was taken to the Children's Advocacy Center, and was forensically interviewed. I don't know where this case stands now, but this is a great example of how young children can benefit from the services of a forensic interview at a Children's Advocacy Center. I want to talk a little bit about this gentleman. This was out of Williamson County. It was before I worked there, but I found it interesting. It was in October of 2008 and involved 2 twin girls. And they made what some people would call a delayed outcry. And normally, children don't immediately tell you what's happened to them. They may wait months, they may wait weeks, they may wait years to tell you about what's happened to them. Well, in this case, these 2 young girls made outcry that I believe their grandfather had been sexually assaulting them. And at the Children's Advocacy Center, they were forensically interviewed, and they talked to the girls about the abuse and recorded the interviews. During the trial, the jury actually heard the testimony of the girls and listened to the recordings that the children made at the Children's Advocacy Center. We need Children's Advocacy Centers because of the Gregory Vincents. You never know who's lurking in your backyard. You never know who's interacting with you or your children in public. Gregory Vincent worked at the Georgetown Airport. And when he was arrested, Mr. Vincent had over 17,000 images of child pornography on a portable hard drive that he would carry with him to work and back home. And one day, his wife just happened to look on there for some family photos and found these disturbing images. Mr. Vincent had progressed from viewing images of child pornography to secretly videotaping his stepchildren in various periods of undress. He authored stories of rape and incest and was a very vile person. His children were interviewed at the Children's Advocacy Center, stepchildren, and we were able to uncover and prosecute Mr. Vincent. Why do we need Children's Advocacy Centers? Because they allow for in-depth investigations of claims of sexual or physical abuse. When it comes down to explaining in one final way the importance of a Children's Advocacy Center, and if I can communicate to you how important it is, I want you to take this specific scenario. Let's say we have a 4-year-old child who makes outcry of sexual abuse, and that's all they have, is a 4-year-old child saying something bad happened to me. All of us have interacted with 4-year-old children. Nobody wants to put a 4-year-old child on a witness stand to tell what happened. Nobody wants to subject a 4-year-old child to cross-examination by a defense attorney. A good defense attorney could point out inconsistencies in her story and the fact that details were added over time. Children tell stories in pieces over time, and that it took years to make outcry. The likely result, if all we have is a 4-year-old child's outcry, is an acquittal. Now let's add something to it. That 4-year-old child made outcry, and they were taken to a Children's Advocacy Center where they were forensically interviewed, and a SANE exam was performed. And during that SANE exam, they located biological material that was consistent with the abuse that the child said. When I talk about biological material, I'm talking about touch DNA, semen, things that are associated with a sexual assault of a child. Additionally, photographs of tearing and trauma to the child could be detected. So if we take that and we have an outcry, plus we have a SANE exam that brings out evidence consistent with the child, the result changes dramatically. And the result is more likely a conviction and one less person who would hurt our children on the streets. That was Jose Arturo Alvarado, sex offender convicted for rape of a 4-year-old child. This was when I was in Williamson County. During an interview at the Williamson County Children's Advocacy Center, the child provided a detailed description of Alvarado sexually assaulting her. A medical exam conducted at the center by a sexual assault nurse examiner revealed evidence of an injury consistent with the sexual assault. During the trial, the child testified and identified Alvarado as the person who sexually assaulted her, a 4-year-old child on the stand talking about this. The combined efforts of CPS, the Sheriff's Office, the CAC, a nurse, a victim coordinator, prosecutors, a judge, a jury, and a caring mother resulted in the protection of a vulnerable child, said District Attorney John Bradley. This sex offender will never hurt another child. But the CAC does so much more. There's so many more services that are offered through a Children's Advocacy Center. We offer services to victims of sexual abuse, physical abuse, neglect, child fatality, child witness, child at risk. I hate to keep going back to when I was a prosecutor because I'm not anymore. Now I'm in private practice, and sometimes I'm on the other side of the fence. Sometimes I do defense work. And so I recognize how important it is for the CAC to stay neutral and for this to be a very clean process. And I advocate for that. But when I was a prosecutor, if I had a child who was a witness of a homicide or some type of fatality, I would send them directly to the Children's Advocacy Center because I had such faith in their ability to interview and preserve that child's testimony. So there is so much more that can be done. Why do we need a CAC? Because we all have an interest in protecting our children and assuring that justice is done. There is no more direct way that your contribution can contribute to the prosecution of those who would harm our children. There is no way that your monetary or your service contribution could contribute in any more direct manner to helping keep pedophiles off of the street. The CAC is the first line of defense and not only assists in prosecuting the guilty, but helps to vindicate the innocent. We should all take an active role in supporting our local CAC. The Hill Country Children's Advocacy Center is a 503c nonprofit. We're funded by a mix of grants and donations, fundraisers. We have 2 main fundraisers, our purse bingo and our rifles racks and deer tracks. But most of all, we're funded and supported by people who channel their concern for our children into a willingness to support such a worthy organization. And I challenge each of you as you go out today and tomorrow to find a way to help support this CAC. And I thank you all for being here and being willing to do what you're doing. Thank you.